Mahipal?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, you can start.
Okay, sir. Very good afternoon to all. Thank you so much for joining again. I'm Mepal Singh Toma on behalf of the FPE webinar team and Department of Food Process Engineering, NIT Rourkela. Again, heartily welcome to you in the second session of second day Karyasala, high-end international workshop on technology for increasing the shelf life of perishable foods. In the, in this in the first session, our expert deeply discussed with the novel and new research topic in the food processing like 3D printing. Also, it will be helpful for us. This topic was presented by the Dr. Jayita Mitra ma'am. She is working in the Department of Agriculture and Food Engineering, IIT Kharagpur, and the second presentation was on the membrane processing covered by the Dr. Ramachandra Pradhan sir. Both the topic was the novel for food process engineer. In this session, we have two lectures. First one is the demonstration of membrane filtration equipment, and the second one is the PMFME scheme to boost post-harvest processing and value additions in India. Without wasting the time of our members, now we are moving to our first session, demonstration of membrane filtration equipment. During the demonstration session, if you have any query, you can type in the question answer sections. Our expert will try to give satisfactory answer to you. Now we will start the demonstration sessions. Abdullah sir.
Hello everyone, I welcome you to this demonstration class. We will demonstrate this membrane filtration unit for the fruit juice. As you know that this membrane filtration nowadays play an important role in the juice processing industry, that is the food processing industry. As whatever the juice are there, so they are treated with the thermal technology. Because of this thermal treatment, some disadvantages are there to the fruit juice, such as there may be a loss of volatile component, there may be loss of nutritional component, there may be loss of color, there may be a cooked flavor, so on. So these are the disadvantages of the thermal treatment. To avoid those disadvantages, this membrane filtration technology can be adopted for an alternative to the thermal treatment. So various type of membrane can be used for the fruit juice processing using this membrane filtration technology. So we'll demonstrate you the detailed component of this membrane filtration unit, the working principle of the membrane filtration unit. Okay. So all practically will show you with the help of this class. So before starting this demonstration program, my research scholar Mr. Abdullah, he will be explaining you in detail about this membrane filtration unit. He will show you the demonstration, he will show you the component, he will show the specification, including washing and other parts of this membrane filtration unit. So over to Abdullah.
Thank you, sir. My name is Abdullah, research scholar under Professor Ramchandra Pradhan, Department of Food Process Engineering, NIT Rourkela. Today, I will be giving a live demonstration video of this membrane filtration system. In this demonstration, I will be explaining you different parts, basic principles and working of this system. I welcome you all to this live demonstration video. The requisites for today's demonstration are a membrane filtration system. What you are seeing here is a membrane filtration system, and the next one is a membrane. What you are seeing here is a 0.2 micrometer microfiltration membrane, which is made up of polysulfone material. And the next requisite is fruit juice. Here we have taken mango juice. You can see this mango juice is turbid and it is unclear. One of the basic application of membrane filtration is clarification. So here we are going to remove the turbidity and haziness of this particular mango juice using membrane filtration system. Another application of membrane filtration system is cold sterilization. Fruit juices contains high amount of microorganisms such as bacteria, yeast and mold. Membrane filtration system can be utilized to remove these microorganisms from the fruit juice. Hence, the next prerequisite for our demonstrations are HNO3 and NaOH. HNO3 and NaOH are the basic chemicals that is required during membrane washing. Membrane washing is a very important step to remove dirt and fouling of the membrane. So now moving on to the detailing of membrane filtration system and membrane. Membrane processing was introduced as an alternative technology to the traditional thermal processing of food. Currently, membrane processing emerged as one among the most significant branches of food processing, with almost 20 to 30% of the total worldwide production of membranes today are utilized for food processing applications and has an annual growth rate of approximately 7.5%. The membrane processing is a non-thermal technique without any involvement of chemical agents and alteration of pH, temperature and phase. Moreover, this technology can work on the continuous process and is more energy efficient and economical. It reduces labor and production cost as compared to other similar conventional technologies such as precipitation, centrifugation, gravity sedimentation, adsorption, solvent extraction, evaporation, flocculation and coagulation. What you are seeing here is a typical membrane filtration unit. It is divided into two separate sections. This is one section and this is another section. So this section is used for microfiltration and ultrafiltration, and this section is used for nanofiltration and reverse osmosis. That is, for fruit juice processing, this portion is used for clarification and this portion is used for concentration. Coming to microfiltration. The microfiltration is a technique involving a large membrane pore size from 0.1 to 10 micrometer, lower operating pressure from 110 to 300 kilopascal, and a molecular weight cutoff higher than 100 kilodalton. Microfiltration membranes is typically made using polymeric materials such as polyamide, chlorinated silica, stainless steel, carbon-carbon composites, and alumina. Like microfiltration, ultrafiltration membranes are usually made using hydrophilic materials such as polyamide, polyether sulfone, polycarbonate, cellulose esters, polyether amide, polyether ether ketone, and polysulfone. As I have already said, the other part of the membrane filtration system is used for nanofiltration and reverse osmosis techniques. The nanofiltration is a comparatively new technique intermediate to ultrafiltration and reverse osmosis. It involves a 0.5 to 2 nanometer pore size membrane with operating pressure of 500 to 1500 kilopascal and a molecular weight cutoff in the range of 200 to 2000 Dalton. Nanofiltration removes components with a small molecular weight, for example, amino acids, sugars, divalent ions, and all microorganisms. However, it allows the passing of certain monovalent ions such as sodium chloride along with water through the membrane. In food industries, nanofiltration is used for demineralization of sugars, the concentration of dyes, milk and juices, and recovery of bioactive compounds from liquid foods. It has higher efficiency, reliability, ease of operation, and lower energy consumption than reverse osmosis process. Coming to reverse osmosis technique, it is also known as hyperfiltration. It consists of a dense membrane with a pore size less than 1 nanometer, an operating pressure of 2000 to 6500 kilopascal, and a molecular weight cutoff of 100 Dalton. It is used for desalination, purification, concentration, and separation. Reverse osmosis is recognized as the most effective method for the elimination of chemical residues, dissolved salts, and inorganic components from water. It can also combine with other filtration techniques such as ultrafiltration and microfiltration. The food industry application of reverse osmosis includes drinking water purification, whey and milk pre-concentration, alcoholic beverage de-alcoholization, and juice concentration. However, higher energy consumption, fouling tendency, and high pressure are some of the disadvantages of reverse osmosis process. As I have already said, this membrane filtration system is divided into two different parts. This is the clarification setup. Different parts of this clarification system includes a holding tank. This is the place where we will hold our feed. See, this is the feed. Currently we have given water as the feed for washing. It also contains two pressure valves, pressure valve 1 and pressure valve 2. It contains a speed controller here. This is a speed controller. Then a peristaltic pump. This is a peristaltic pump. Here it has two pressure gauges to calculate the total pressure, total transmembrane pressure of the process, and it has a membrane holder where we will keep our membrane. This is a microfiltration membrane of size 0.2 micrometer. Its size will be written here. 0.2 micrometer is its size, and the other part of the membrane filtration system, as I have already said, this part is used for concentration of fruit juices. The concentration is an essential unit operation in juice processing aimed to ensure a lesser packing, storage and transportation cost and a longer shelf life. Concentrated juice has less water activity, which makes it resistant and more stable to chemical and microbiological spoilage than the normal juice. Traditionally, juice concentration is carried out using evaporation techniques, which involves high energy consumption and high temperature, resulting in quality depletion due to the formation of off flavor, loss of volatile beneficial components, and degradation of color. However, concentration using membrane filtration is a non-thermal, low-cost technology which doesn't use any chemical agents and phase change. The different parts of the membrane concentration unit includes one pressure control valve, one feed tank where we will keep our feed, then two pressure gauges, pressure gauge 1 and 2, membrane module. Here we will keep our RO or nanofiltration membranes, then a peristaltic pump here. Similar to our microfiltration unit, we also have a peristaltic pump in concentration unit also. Coming to the membranes associated with a membrane filtration system, these are different types of membranes. All these membranes were purchased from WaterSup Explorer, Mumbai, India. These membranes have different membrane pore sizes. For example, this is a microfiltration membrane with a pore size of 0.45 micrometer. You can see it is written there, and a surface area of 52 centimeter square. It has a maximum temperature capacity of 40 degrees Celsius, and it can withhold a maximum pressure of 20 psi and at 20 degrees Celsius. Similarly, this is another microfiltration membrane with membrane pore size 0.1 micrometer, and the surface area, dimensions, maximum temperature and pressure for this membrane is similar to that of 0.45 micrometer membrane. However, this is an ultrafiltration membrane whose membrane pore size is 50 kilodalton. Its surface area is 52 centimeter square. It can also withstand a maximum temperature up to 40 degrees Celsius and maximum pressure up to 20 psi. Similarly, this is also an ultrafiltration membrane of 30 kilodalton. This is another membrane of 10 kilodalton. This is another membrane of 5 kilodalton. However, this is a reverse osmosis membrane. The basic difference between these two membranes are not only on its membrane pore sizes but also on the membrane module. These two are made up of two different membrane modules. These particular membranes are made using hollow fiber module. The hollow fiber module involves compactly packed bundles of thin tubular fibers. Each bundle is generally made using numerous single hollow fibers, usually in the range of 50 to 3000, thickly sealed on both the ends inside a shell tube. This arrangement makes the hollow fiber modules resistant to higher pressure. The typical hollow fiber diameter is in between 0.2 to 3 mm and has a length in the range of 18 to 120 cm. However, the reverse osmosis fibers made using hollow fiber module are exceptional with a diameter as low as 0.04 mm but has a higher resistance to pressure than other fibers. These modules can operate in both inside out and outside inside mode. That is, in inside out mode, the feed flows along the inner side of the membrane fiber and the final products comes out through its outer side. Whereas in outside inside mode, the movement of feed is from the outer area of the membrane fiber and the permeate collects at its inner side. The hollow fiber modules consumes only the minimum energy and have a thick packing density. However, it shows a fouling tendency, hence make it difficult to treat high viscous feeds or feeds with higher solid content. Also, these modules are very hard to maintain and clean. However, this is a spiral wound module membrane. In spiral wound module, two flat sheets of the membrane and a mesh-like spacer, typically 0.03 to 0.1 inch thick, are wrapped together and surrounded in a porous central tube. One edge of the membrane sheet has an opening near the central tube for collecting the permeate, while the remaining three edges are closed together. The liquid feed flows in an axial direction along the membrane surface, whereas the permeate passes through the center in a radial direction and collects outside the central tube. The spiral wound membrane have an average fouling tendency, compact design, more energy efficiency, acceptable packing density, and higher surface area volume ratio. The spiral wound membrane are capable of treating feeds with larger volumes, but necessary pre-treatment should be done for high viscous feeds and feeds with large particulate matter. Other than these two, there are two other major membrane modules such as plate and frame module and tubular module. In tubular module, the modules have a shell and tube configuration where the tube-shaped membrane is fit inside two cold and hot fluid cylindrical chambers. It typically works in a cross flow or tangential mode. In this module, the feed pumps along the membrane center at high velocity, which develops a layer of concentration polarization along the surface of the membrane, promoting to more comfortable cleaning and stable and high flux. The tubes of the membranes generally have a length in between 0.6 to 6 mm and a large inner diameter between 5 to 25 mm, typically fabricated using perforated plastic or fabric support. These modules have a good effective area, low fouling tendency, and are best suited to treat high viscous feeds and feed with high solid content. In plate and frame module, the configuration of plate and frame module is similar to that of spiral wound module. In this module, the spacers and the membranes are arranged together in layers, that is planar configuration, between flat sheets or plates. Hence, it is also known as flat sheet modules. They are more comfortable to maintain and clean but bit costlier. Therefore, it has broader application in laboratory scales. The plate and frame membranes can be used to treat high viscous feeds and feed with high solid content. It generally has a length of about 10 to 60 centimeter and the channel gap is in the range of 0.5 to 10. Coming to the working of the membrane filtration unit, both the clarification unit and concentration unit works on same principle. Today we will be demonstrating how a juice clarification unit works. As I already said, the main parts of a juice clarifying unit is a feed tank. We will be feeding our fruit juice here. Currently we have fed water. This feed will pass through the silicone tube with the help of peristaltic pump. This peristaltic pump will suck the feed from the feed tank and it will pass through the inlet of the membrane at high pressure. Once it passes through the membrane, the juice particles which has lesser size than the membrane pore size will pass through the membrane and it will be collected here as permeate. However, those particles which will not pass through the membrane will be collected through this pipe as retardate. Here the retardate will be recirculated back to the feed tank so that it will again pass through the membrane for further filtration. This is how a membrane filtration unit works. When we switch on the main power plug and when we switch on the peristaltic pump, the membrane start functioning. Here the pump rotates at 121 rpm. We can set the rpm. Here the rpm is set according to trial and error method. I have kept the rpm at 130. Initially the pressure valve will be open. It is open, both the pressure valve will be open. This time the inlet and outer pressure gauge will be 0. Since the pressure is 0, there won't be any filtration. Whatever the juice comes out through the membrane will be recirculated back to the feed pump. That is, there won't be any permeate. However, when you increase the transmembrane pressure, see here I have increased the transmembrane pressure to 20 psi. Both the transmembrane pressure reaches 20 psi. The filtration starts. You can see permeate collecting here and the retardate is sending back to the feed. Now we will see how a clarification happens in fruit juice. For this purpose, initially we have removed all the water which was present in the feed tank. Now the feed tank is empty and the inlet valve will be closed. Once the inlet valve is closed, the juice should be fed in the feed tank. This is a 500 ml fruit juice which will be fed in the feed tank for clarification. You can see the color of the fruit. It is highly turbid. Once the juice is fed, the peristaltic pump should be turned on, followed by opening of the inlet valve. You can see the juice is passing through the silicone tube with the help of peristaltic pump. The peristaltic pump is rotating in 129 rpm. And since the pressure is zero, all the juice is flowing back to the feed tank through the silicone tube. Now, for the clarification, we have to apply transmembrane pressure by closing the pressure valve. I am increasing the pressure to 20 psi. 20 is the maximum psi this particular membrane can withhold at 20 degrees Celsius. Now you can see the juice which is clarified started coming through the outlet of the membrane. This is the permeate of the membrane, and the retentate is flowing back to the feed tank. This is how the clarified juice is flowing out of the membrane. You can see it is a clear, colorless fluid. We will keep the silicone tube back so that the permeate or the clarified juice can be collected in this beaker. The major constraint for using a membrane filtration unit is the fouling of the membrane. Fouling is one of the main concern during membrane processing, since it can adversely affect the membrane functioning. In a membrane structure, there are different varieties of fouling, such as biofouling or biological fouling, inorganic fouling, organic fouling, and particulate or colloidal fouling. Biofouling is associated with the formation of biofilm on the membrane surface due to the activity of organisms such as fungi, bacteria, or algae. These biofilms produce biopolymers such as amino acids, proteins, and polysaccharides, which causes fouling. These kind of foulings are also known as microbial fouling. Organic fouling is formed when organic matters are accumulated at the pores. The adsorption or decomposition of magnesium carbonate or calcium salts or other inorganic precipitates on the membrane pores is termed as inorganic fouling or scaling. Colloidal or particulate fouling formation is due to the decomposition of colloids or inert organic compounds on the membrane. Fouling can be reduced or controlled by various methods such as pre-treating the feed with enzymes, centrifugation, ultrasound, and membrane heating and membrane cleaning. Once the microfiltration is over, the clarified juice will be collected like this. You can see it is a very clear, colorless and turbidless juice. After membrane filtration, the membrane should be cleaned periodically to remove the blocks and pollutions caused by the decomposition of impurities and separation components on the membrane surface. An efficient and periodic cleaning not only reduces membrane fouling but also can extend the life of the membrane. The two most common methods of membrane cleaning are forward flushing and backward flushing. In forward flushing, permeate or feed water is flushed more rapidly into the membrane at high hydraulic pressure. This rapid flow results in high turbulence, and due to this, the impurities deposited in the membrane surface are discharged and released. However, the contaminants that blocked the membrane pores must be removed by forward flushing. In backward flushing, the feed water or permeate is flushed in the direction opposite to the actual flow at high pressure. The flux during backward flushing will be twice as that of the flux during regular filtration. For restoring the flux and to improve the cleaning efficiency, a chemical cleaning technique or acid-alkali wash is usually followed along with backward flushing. Citric, oxalic and hydrochloric acid are the generally used acid solution with a pH in the range of 2 to 3 for the effective removal of the inorganic materials. Similarly, sodium hydroxide solution with a pH range of 10 to 12 is the commonly used alkali solution for chemical washing of membrane. Initially, the procedure that we follow for membrane washing is as follows. Initially, the membrane will be rinsed using tap water at minimum transmembrane pressure and a maximum flow rate for 30 minutes. Subsequently, 0.1% NaOH solution will be heated to 50 degrees Celsius and flushed through the membrane for 30 minutes at the same transmembrane pressure and flow rate. This is the alkali wash that we follow. After alkali wash, again tap water will be used to rinse the membrane until neutral pH. Further, 0.1% HNO3 solution will be heated to 50 degrees Celsius and flushed through the membrane for 30 minutes at the same transmembrane pressure and flow rate. This is the acid wash that we follow. After the acid wash, again tap water will be used to rinse until neutral pH. That is how we wash our membranes after each membrane processing. So now, since the juice clarification is over, we are going to start our membrane washing procedure. For this purpose, already we have prepared chemicals, HNO3 for acid wash, NaOH solution for alkali wash and distilled water. First, we will start with water wash. We will take 500 ml of distilled water and we will feed it on the feed tank. This is approximately 500 ml of water. After that, we have to switch on our peristaltic pump. Once it is on, make sure that the inlet valve is open. There should not be any transmembrane pressure during water wash. The water wash will be done for approximately 30 to 45 minutes. The water wash is done, we will remove water from the feed tank like this. The water will be collected in this conical flask. You can see. Once the water wash is over, we will do alkali wash. For this, we will add 500 ml of NaH solution into the feed tank and switch on the peristaltic pump. Here also make sure that the inlet valve is open and there is no transmembrane pressure. You can see there will not be any filtration happening. The complete alkali solution will be recirculating back as return date. Once the alkali wash is over, we will be collecting the NaOH solution back into this conical flask. Once the alkali wash is over, again we have to do water wash. 500 ml of distilled water should be added into the feed tank and switch on the peristaltic pump. Make sure that the inlet valve is open and there is no transmembrane pressure. Once the water wash is done, again collect the water back into this conical flask. Once the water wash is over, next one is acid wash. For that, 500 ml of HNO3 solution will be added into the feed tank, followed by switching on the peristaltic pump. Acid wash will be conducted at 0 transmembrane pressure. Once the acid wash is completed, we will be collecting the acid back into the conical flask. The acid wash will be followed by a final tap water wash. For this purpose, 500 ml of tap water will be added into the feed tank, followed by opening the valve and reducing the transmembrane pressure to 0. The final tap water wash will also be conducted for minimum 30 minutes to ensure that the pH is back to neutral. This is how membrane washing is conducted.
of this membrane filtration unit is completed. I hope you all got an idea about this membrane filtration unit, so that may be helpful to you or for further research. We have already published some of our work at NIT Rourkela. You can also find out those publications. Still, if you have any doubt or any clarification or any suggestion, most welcome, and you can contact me at any point of time for any type of clarification on this membrane filtration unit. Thank you very much.
Thank you for explaining about the membrane filtration and its process. The laboratory scale experiments is well demonstrated by Abdullah. If there is any clarification needed regarding membrane filtration and its working, you can raise your hands and you can directly interact with him. If there is no question, we'll directly go to the next session. Mahipal?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, please introduce the next speaker.
Thank you, sir. For the second lecture, I would like to call Dr. Ashutosh Upadhyay, sir, Professor and Head, Department of Food Science and Technology, NIFTM, Sonipat. Dr. Ashutosh Upadhyay, sir, received the Master of Technology in Chemical Technology from Harcourt Butler Technical University, Kanpur, and PhD in Engineering and Technology from Mahatma Gandhi Chitrakoot Gramoday Vishwavidyalaya, Chitrakoot. Sir has more than 25-year teaching experience, and his research area is healthy food, food safety, grain processing, and minimal processing of food material. Sir has published more than 45 national and international research papers with good impact factor. Sir also received the prestigious award like a Young Scientist and Best Science Research Award. Now, I would like to invite Sir for his presentation on PMFME scheme to boost post-harvest processing and value addition in India. Now, this platform is yours, sir. Please come, sir.
Thank you very much, Mahipal ji, for the introduction, and thank you, organizers, NIT Rourkela, Dr. Pradhan, Dr. Rachna, for giving this opportunity. So I think, yeah, everything is perfect. Is it audible, visible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Just to, yeah, okay, fine. Quickly sharing some slides, and then we'll start discussing. So just a minute. I hope screen is visible.
Yes, sir.
Oh, then it's perfect. Thank you. This is a Karyashala, and we have just seen a demonstration, which is a virtual hands-on kind of thing has been given on that advanced technology, and the membrane utilization was being demonstrated. And after having at least yesterday, you had a good round of discussions. Today, Jayita started, and then I think would have been continued. And in that way, bringing you to some contrast test, which appears to be less academic, which appears also to an extent, I'll say that it may not find a direct connect to when we say that the focus is post-harvest processing and value addition. But I hope I'll go forward in this scheme and will make a connect that how is it relevant, and more academicians, researchers, and those who have the stakeholder, those who are the stakeholders in this particular sector of food processing, they should connect with this particular scheme. So once again, thank you very much for giving this platform to discuss this particular scheme, flagship scheme at present under the Ministry of Food Processing, and whereby Atmanirbhar Bharat, and when we say that it's a Sukshma Udyamoं ka Sambal, and this particular scheme tagline is. So what is that important in terms of the value addition and post-harvest processing of the sector, which we call it micro or tiny or whatever you call it. But when we say this, we say with a force that the kind of force is there that 25 lakh unorganized food processing units are there which are contributing to this sector. And that too, not only in terms of their number of 20 lakh, but it is also important that they are contributing a good amount of employment. So 74% of employment in food processing sector. And data also says that nearly 60% of these units are in rural areas. So see that how they are connected to the grassroots. And really they are giving a picture that sustainable development, SDG Millennium Goals, when they are close to the production site, all those things are there. And 80% of them are family based, again connecting back to the sustainability goal that supporting livelihood in rural households and minimizing their migration to the urban areas. So that's the connect, or that's the strength this particular sector has. Now coming to that kind of challenges which were visualized or which were deliberated before this scheme was launched. The conclusion was that they have a laxus of that there is access challenge in terms of modern technology equipment, like we were talking of the membrane as one of the operational thing and potential application. There is many value-added product can come through the membranes, but this particular sector, most of them are not even aware that such technology exists. So they have lacked that access difficulty and lack of access in terms of modern technology. This is equally important that quality part of the products, if we see, and the state-of-art quality or state-of-art, or even I'll say that not state-of-art, but the basics in terms of regulatory aspect. So they are missed by many of these processors, and thereby they are challenged. And branding, marketing, supply chain integration, backward, forward, both sides. So that's the challenge which was studied, and the data supported that way. Then this particular scheme was thought of in terms of that whatever their potential is there, but they are not able to contribute to the value chain matching to their potential. So that was the basis for having this scheme, and government thought of and brought it. One more thing, when we say that vocal for local in this scheme, this is based on one district, one product, ODOP, which is called. This was an origination in one of the, this is basically concept borrowed, or means you can say not borrowed, but it is made popular by National Productivity Council Asia, and Japan was a successful example in introducing this ODOP, or OTOP, they call it, one Tambul, one products. Many of the Asian countries say so. Idea is that whatever we say, for example, we have to modernize, enhance the competitiveness of existing individual micro enterprise. Those enterprises which are directly involved in at commercial level, and so the value addition they are practicing, processing they are practicing, and it includes also FPOs, self-help groups, cooperatives, and so, for example, whole value chain by and large is addressed here. So for all-round upgradation of this sector, which is a micro enterprise sector, financial, technical, business support. So that was thought of in this particular scheme, and which was launched more than 1.5 years back, somewhere in June 20, which is 29th June. Now it is being implemented in 35 states and UTs taking together. Little more about ODOP. So how to arrive at ODOP? Basically, ODOP is a very detailed exercise which was done in this, and it has a direct bearing on the value addition at that particular site. Number one thing is that percent of total agriculture produce, it could be dominating, could be when I say this, but important is this was made as a basic yardstick that they should be perishable or means highly perishable or perishable, so that challenge in terms of the shelf life. So value addition and processing will help to take them for a wider distribution. And if there is a district which is associated with something like Agra, we have an ODOP, which is Petha. So Petha is very well associated, and people in country and beyond the country know that this is a product. So that kind of thing. So means there could be lot many options which were given, but perishability was kept as one of the prime criteria under this. And say, for example, if there is large number of workers, like Petha was an example also fitting for it, that could also be considered ODOP, or that was considered as ODOP. And then if a state has a specific focus of marketing something, that was also duly considered. And then there were discussions at district authority level. There were ICRs. They also have an ODOP list. So their views were taken, and if required, some modification or matching was done in it. And that is how the ODOP was selected. But what ODOP is contributing in this? So ODOP is made a compulsory or a compulsion given through the ODOP side, that if a new individual micro enterprise coming for a value addition, coming for post-harvest processing, then they have to choose it from ODOP, which is assigned to a district. And something which is not allowed for the district, or is not listed as an ODOP for district, would be a restriction for it. However, existing micro individual units were kept away from that restriction. So that is what in ODOP part of it, if there is an individual enterprise. If there is a group activity like SHGs or so, then ODOP is the mainly which is considered. And particularly it is thought of, and it is stated in the scheme that they should, if they are working on ODOP, but they want to grow and extend the value addition side on non-ODOP, then it is acceptable. So that is what the relation of ODOP is there. And I'll connect the audience here, which is, I understand that we have an academic fraternity and the researchers here as the audience side. So this ODOP is really, we are facing challenge to strengthen at many of the stages and many of the ODOP in particular. So that is what we want to connect. So ODOP, almost 707 districts are there across 35 states, UT, what I said. But out of that, because ODOP might be common and repeating, so for that 137 are the individual one district, one product commodities are identified. Examples, for example, some districts, if we take the milk and milk product as a category. So milk and milk product is a category also. Milk and milk product as a ODOP also. Several districts has selected milk and milk product because they have a good base of milk. So taken milk and milk product as ODOP, but some has taken individual product within that, like peda, ghee. So these are two examples which I'm taking. They are individually taken as an ODOP. So, but they cover also under the milk and milk product umbrella, and milk and milk products, we are covering almost 10 products at present for this particular class of micro enterprises. Example given here is that Punjab, the districts are there, Telangana, Uttar Pradesh. So milk and milk product is one which is good and widely selected, but not above fruits and vegetables. Fruits and vegetables, considering because their perishability was also a yardstick, so they are taken as a major ODOP, or most of the districts has fruits and vegetable as a category of ODOP. Example given here is oh, sorry, it is written as fruits and vegetable on the top of it, but unfortunately they have wrongly selected that bakery pictures. So potato, tomato, mango, guava, like apple in Himachal. So these are the examples where ODOP are taken as fruits and vegetable products. When we say that commodity, the commodity is essentially because someone who is involved in the processing will lead to a value-added product out of it. And if we look for the bakery, the Punjab, Delhi, some of the more urbanized kind of things where the people have selected, or the cities, like in Delhi, there is hardly the rural structure is existing nowadays, very limited farming and so. So that's why bakery is given. A big number of districts having ODOP bakery is just 50 out of 707. So this is the picture which comes under the one district, one product, or the ODOP groups. Similarly, we have a group for spice, means category as spices, category as meat and meat product. There are 9 different categories, and including one being a minor forest produce. So that is what ODOP picture or the scenario is. So it's a huge challenge in the country when we say that in fruits and vegetables still we are hardly entering into the two digit for if we consider the total value addition which is done, or the processing which is done in except milk, which is rest of the perishables, it is not really very high. Something more from that potential of the value addition, if you look, and possibility of the value addition, and thereby connecting back to the research side of it, academic institutions has to connect with it. That is the lesser known ODOPs, but they have potential if we look into those products, their availability. Jackfruit. So jackfruit recently has come in limelight, and the jackfruit flour and its relation with the reduction that sugar or those diabetic challenges. So this is already popular, but it's still it has a potential. Recently, some of the exercises now were done with some of the entrepreneurs. They assigned this problem to a consultant, and they worked in our pilot plant, and thereby they have come up with some baked varieties of baked snacks and extruded snacks, where they used in baked snacks they were offering health under healthy category or USP of just 15% almost fat in per serving. They are offering 100 kilocalories, so very less, which they claim, and including protein and which is again 15%. So they had those kind of things also along with the jackfruit products. And this product was also, they were able to have some ties with UK. So we are looking for those kind of solutions and the technologies and technological solutions, so that when we say that at NIFTEM Kundali and the NIFTEM Tanjore, both the institutions are linked with this scheme in terms of institution being under ministry, so as an apex institution, and we are trying to partnering with the institutions down. When I say that we'll connect you to that kind of connection at the end, that what is the institutional infrastructure, linkages are there. So, but initially we'll finish this ODOP first. So jackfruit is one. Passion fruit. Passion fruit is now, we know that the kind of cost, and just putting it to the juice, jam, jelly, nectar, rather than offering it or extending supply chain, can we take it to that as a table fruit directly, looking into the potential benefits of this particular product. So that is what we need to take those informations to the people who are involved in or doing business with the passion fruit. And mijo chili. So mijo chili versus the rest of the chili, it has an USP. It has at its characteristic taste, flavor, and going good with gelling with pickles. So, but just being limited to the green sauces or the paste would be a limitation, and probably we need to think beyond this. When we are giving a specific tag like Mijo chili, and if we can put certain GI tags to these products, and can there could be a possibilities for value addition and for a better market for these products. So that is what we emphasize, and that's why there's a connection that our researchers, our academic fraternity should also know about this scheme in particular, and they should start working in this regard. And I'll come to that component, that there is a direct component of research is also associated with this scheme. But before that, say Moringa. Moringa is a few of the southern state, there are districts which have selected the Moringa, and we are now, at least in international market also, some exports are going, and Moringa tea, Moringa powder, Moringa based other things are also going. People have started selling honey in name of Moringa. So unifloral, whether it is really unifloral or not, on what kind of quality test we have to validate for it. So these challenges still remains for in terms of validating the what value addition is being claimed, or what USP is being claimed in terms of the product. So moving further, like Mahua. Mahua is Maduka indica, which many of you might not be aware, but at least those who are from central India part, or those Madhya Pradesh, some part of the Uttar Pradesh, Bundelkhand, this is the one crop which gives a flower which is a very tangy kind of smell, and it is unfortunately used for making illicit liquor. But this is a good amount of sugar which is there, and people have been using it in traditional way after drying it up. And this claims to have a very good nutrition for point of view, if we consider like some of the female health problems it addresses. It is used for old age problems and arthritis related problems in a folklore kind of applications, I'm just telling. But the challenge here is, though the jam, laddu, or those things people have tried, there are 1 or 2 publications or some library work would be available in agriculture university setup. But the challenge is not yet addressed in terms of that aftertaste which Mahua leaves. So we need a value addition here, that somebody can come up with some work, and thereby taking the sweetness out of it, and discarding that aftertaste or the bitter acrid kind of taste which it leaves on the tongue. And even some formal protocols of drying Mahua flower, because it goes very degree of browning, and then subsequent storage might also have or challenges in terms of storage, challenges of fungus growth and all. So those protocols are not yet, I have seen, validated, and we need to bring it on record. We need to bring it to disseminate. So that's kind of value addition connect from NIFTEM side on behalf of ministry. I would like to put forward it for the academicians and the researchers here. Moving further, if we look another product which is Chironji. So Chironji is Mahua, Chironji, honey. These all are listed under category or product group which is minor forest produce. Chironji is a very good fruit. I don't know that how many of you would have seen this fruit. Chironji, many of you would have experienced that small, tiny, which is a dry fruit used for the dressing of different sweets and even some confectionery items. But if we look this on the whole, once it is a fruit, so that fruit has a very small layer of pulp, but it is a differently very relishing kind of taste and sweet in taste. And then once we break it, that kernel, and then go in, or the stone we can call it. So then the inside, whatever is there in terms of the seed kind of structure. So that is what is known as chironji, but equally people have not explored much about the chironji fruit. So this is one thing which is a challenge for value addition or future work on it. And something which can go as sweet chironji, some flavored chironji like elaichi, like saunf, that could be possibility. I've seen, because in PMFME, I got this opportunity to explore something on these products. So chironji, there are sweet makers, particularly because chironji is found in those tropical, subtropical forests of Madhya Pradesh at large. So in Sagar, I have seen that some of the local people, they have a connect and they buy it and they make a very good shelf-stable product. But that needs an intervention. Can we bring it more solidified in a particular shape? It's more an pudding, halwa kind of thing which they make it, but it's a good shelf-stable thing. Texture, if you want to compare, it gives fairly coarse moong halwa kind of texture. So that is what about chironji. Little more I'll say in chironji after 1 or 2 slides. That what we really need to see in terms of ODOP. Okra-based product, which okra is nothing new, and we know that how okra chips can come, vacuum fried okra can be there. Sapota as a fruits and vegetable, we need to think. And though there are certain researches which when we tried, reviewed, and even some work at NIFTEM was carried, putting that whole fruit into its pulping or extracting juice out of it after liquefying with enzymes or that. But still, that there is a need for value addition. If we look for fig in some of the districts, very few districts, they have the fig also as value-added product. But we do not see that processing which goes here, except those dried figs. Though there is a cost, there is a market for it, but can we think of value addition? Because the trade ultimately, or the margin when you get, when you bring the USP, when you add value to it. So that is what is more important, and that is what the aim behind this scheme when PMFME is brought for the public. Some typical examples. Kala Namak rice. I haven't heard Kala Namak rice before coming to this selection of Kala Namak rice as one of the ODOP in one of the eastern district in Uttar Pradesh. And still we have a challenge that what value-added product we have to give for Kala Namak rice. Baidgi chili is, I was not aware because that was my little knowledge or ignorance on it, but Baidgi chili is well known for spice industry, and they already trade it. There is a characteristic pungency which goes, and it is preferred for that. But still, can we think of other than masala or the grinding work for it? Chikori is one of the Uttar Pradesh district which is farmers are growing chikori, and there is only limited contract farming, which one of the Unilever company, they do it. And looking into it, the farmers started growing it, but thereafter out of the contract. So now it's not very good situation for the farmers, for those who are growing chikori. But advantage they see in it, that sometimes it is picked well by Hindustan Lever. They are making a drink. Chikori, I think many of us are aware that chikori goes for coffee. Blending of the chikori is permitted, and however the coffee lobby says that why chikori, and we should have pure coffee. So that's a different story. But important is that chikori is, there is a very specific treatment which goes to the chikori, and then characteristic brewing kind of conditions develops, and it comes out with a special beverage. And in UK, it is an export item. The unit which is there in the Uttar Pradesh district is known as ETA. So it's a 100% export-oriented unit, that nothing comes here in the Indian market of it and goes to Europe. And can we think of those kind of, then chikori, probably chikori processor then in that case would not prefer to go with the coffee, where it is making the coffee cheaper. But chicory itself can have a value equal to the coffee. So that's something is a challenge for, and that is how we expect that if the researchers can take this challenge, can have deliberations on ODOPs, and particularly typical ODOPs, not the conventional. We have mango as a ODOP. We do not have a problem. There are a lot many things available on mango. We have a guava as ODOP under fruits vegetable. Banana as, but we need those the crops which are the certain example, like these typical examples, where we need like chironji. What we saw in this previous slide is limited to oil, sweet chironji, or laddu chironji murabba. When we give this exercise for deliberations to a group, and what we need an analysis kind of thing, or deliberations, or you can say that a probe into these ODOPs that we need in terms of that where we can really place them in the market. What should be our positioning of the product, or comparability? When we compared chironji, looking into that oil or other contents into it. So the group placed it with chironji to the products like peanut, soya bean, or hazelnuts, which are nuts which have good in protein, they are good in oil. So it comes almost with the same. And you compare the data kilocalorie versus the oil percent, but ratio of the MUFA, PUFA, and the fiber and all that. So means nutritionally it could be competitive to those things. But can we think of the product like this when we have hazelnut butter or peanut butter? So probably we can have the chironji butter also, and can be a taste of a certain group of population, and can fetch good values to the aggregators of Madhya Pradesh and Chhattisgarh region. So that is what the aim in terms of the value addition, processing, and taking those challenges and working on those directions. Now, just giving you a basic, so this is what more I was connecting you to the kind of value addition possibilities and potential, and also post-harvest processing for it. But what it brings to the micro sector, so just a brief of it, so that whenever if there is a person comes to a food scientist or technologist, then probably we will guide them that yes, there is a scheme. Here, individual, if they are attempting for micro, means some support for micro enterprise, they need to be number one, what I indicated, that ODOP or those restrictions will remain. And then 35% of the project cost, they could be eligible subject to the maximum 10 lakh of the subsidy. And this subsidy comes as the credit link subsidy. So means there has to be a bankable project, and that enterprise will approach to the bank or will also prepare a detailed project report for the bank, and will parallelly also apply to PMFME through a PMFME portal. And then they can explore, and they can attempt for getting this 35% maximum 10 lakh kind of subsidy. And there is a support for FPO and SHGs, almost same pattern, that 35% credit linkage grant if one individual want for some support, and if they are working in particular activity and they want to expand as an individual, then they can get it. But in addition, that if there are FPO, they want some seed capital, small level working, like they are putting some value addition to the local crop, and some machinery kind of thing they want, then 40,000 as a grant is available. Individual members, I already mentioned 10 lakh or same 35% criteria would be there. Training, hand-holding support, not only for SHGs, that is also for individual micro enterprises. One more good thing here is that support of common infrastructure is there for under this scheme. And that common infrastructure, basically it could be a premise for you want to have agriculture produce, sorting, grading, or warehousing kind of support, so that you can improve the value chain. And there could be common processing facility which come incubation center. So that is also a possibility, which and more so here many of the academic institutions are given preference, because there it has a scheme that it has a grant and aid for the government institutions 100%, while for private it is part of the grant only. So that's why it's a good opportunity for government sector if they contact their local SNA. And SNA, when I say, means it's a still nodal agency. I'll come in the last slide for that. And then this connection can be established. And in this particular, what is there, that provision of common facility incubation center would primarily be focusing to ODOP. And this scheme would also support strengthening of the backward forward linkages. So that kind of things would be seen once the proposal is there. And they can link to the primary, secondary to tertiary, even ready to serve, ready to cook kind of product. That can be looked into this. This is an example. Common facility center, still there are more projects which we are assessing, but at least production cum incubation center has been granted. Almost 56 incubation center across the country has been sanctioned, and 25 states and UTs they have been appraised, and 148.71 crore kind of sanction are there. The condition here that this is for information of the institutions or the representative of the institutions taking part here, that they should involve one or more product line. One or more product line, because one is essentially to be on ODOP. But if it is for fruits and vegetable kind of product, and to make the line viable, to that plant to be used around the year. So that's why some multiple lines are preferred. There could be small units they can hire for processing. So you need to envisage that what could be the possible user, because one-time support is there, installation and having it there, but it has to be run, and there has to be a tripartite agreement. There is an institution, there are state agencies, there is the third party who will run it profitable with some profitability into it. Profitability means not to earn profit, but self-sustainable manner, rather to say. So that is what is the basis, and this product can go commercially. Those who want to come and produce and process here, and they can sell it. Equally important is the support. When we say that we add value at the level of processing, but equally we add value to the product if we are able to make the product a brand, if we are able to give a marketing boost to a product, because that gives the quantum jump to the product. So that kind of support is also envisaged under PMFME. And for that, like training relating to the marketing to be fully funded under the scheme, developing common brand and packaging, including standardization of the participation, marketing tie-up like NAFED and all other agencies, we are taking it up. Soon we will launch one product at Bihar under this scheme, most likely next month, first week. And support for common infrastructure and marketing, branding, that will go for ODOP primarily. It includes R&D if it is required, or that is also included here. One example you can see here, that what it is, it says that cooperatives or an SPB, which is there, then have seat. I'll finish this then. So this SPV is the special purpose vehicle. So what this special purpose vehicle is there, that example I'll give you this. You see this as an example, which is news clippings of March. Punjab sets up the special purpose vehicle for micro food processing unit. So what it goes, special purpose vehicle, I think many of us would have seen like the vehicles which are like National Book Trust, many of the times their vehicle will come to your city. They have the things available for sale. So those kind of things. And taking product like Murabba, Jaggery, Badiya, Amritsari, or so those papad and ready-to-eat products. So those micro enterprise products, giving them brand and the place where they could be. So it is a creation of a marketplace and marketing linkage for the products. So those kind of activities are also supported in under PMFME. And further, so this is what ODOP is doing. Now, what we can do in ODOP, but there are restrictions which we cannot just do, because perishability, more value addition, more processing intensive efforts are needed. So trading, selling of unprocessed millets, grinding and trading of flour simply, the spices which are on piece rate basis, unprocessed loose milk, trading, selling of fruits, vegetable, just trading, selling without any treatment or pre-cuts, or those things are there, package branding is there, then it is permitted. Selling loose and processed spices, simple beekeeping, loose selling, trading. So these things are restricted and not allowed for the consideration, or means this grant in aid or grant credit link grant support would not be there. In addition, that trading and selling of groundnut, areca nut, there is restriction, but there is that restriction state government can take a prior approval, and more so if it is an export variety or export purpose that trading is being carried, and the states want to give support to that particular activity. Similarly, in case of milling of cereals, except a special variety of rice like Kala Namak could be there, or red rice, or millets, certain special kind of millets, maybe Kodam Kutki kind of millets. For those state nodal agencies can take a prior approval from the ministry. So this is what way the value addition or post-harvest processing can be looked and can be envisaged within the scheme, and we need to take that challenge for ODOP, and there are new interventions of science technology in ODOPs. NIFTEM or IFPT, which is now also NIFTEM Tanjore, we are associated, and other state institutions are associated with this scheme for capacity building and research. Capacity building is more for training, but this is soon. This is just for information that sooner we will be, or the ministry means we, when I say that, it means including ministry side under this PMFME cell. Soon, in a sense, almost in next 4 or 5 months, probably some research calls may start coming under this, where some specific solutions, short-term projects, packaging solutions might be needing for the one district, one product, or the value-added products. So that is what is the research component involved under this particular scheme of the government of India. Focus in terms of training we gave, and really we are having a challenge to getting a good content development. Those who have the interest in terms of content development or delivery of, they can develop certain modules and voiceover for the farmers. They can directly write to us. We'll try to connect that. If they are equipped, or means the institution is equipped with the multimedia aids where they can record good small videos related to the products, we would certainly like to use them and upload them for the public access. We'll try to see that the effort could be remunerated. Some token remuneration kind of things may also be thought of for that. So NIFTEM, both the NIFTEM Kundali and Tanjore have developed some contents made available, but this content is not we have developed individually. We have taken support of agriculture universities, agriculture institutions, CSIR institutions. With all that support, we have come up with the write-up. But though still there is a challenge that to have We have developed a network of master trainers, district level trainers also, but still finding it challenging. And so that's why we want to develop something which is directly for beneficiaries. So that is what we are now looking for. There is, I mentioned that on PMFME, there is a portal at Ministry, which is Ministry is hosting, and there is also a link whereby directly individual can apply for it. And this product provide you that opportunity that individual can register, and then after sign up can submit a proposal. And there we are running also a call center for that is NIFTEM Kundli is operating, and that number is 13022281089. So that is there. Any individual, if they wish, or if you're connecting to an individual for knowing more about the scheme, they can connect there. And this is my last slide, whereby I would just explain, like there, how this scheme is being operated, and what way each institution which is offering something in, you can say that in food processing, is connected to it. There is interministry, so that
some internet issue.
I'm sorry that there was some network issue, but I think I was almost done for that. What I want to convey. So means there are state nodal agency, and they hire a state level nodal institution. There could be more than one nodal institutions, and they have to connect with the because every district we have to connect, and beyond the district at taluka level. So it is not possible just by sitting NIFTEM at Kundli or Tanjore. We can do it. So we need support from each one of you. So that is what the scheme goes. And thank you very much once again for patience hearing and this opportunity to the organizers that organizers. I'm really thankful. Now we are open for any discussion or anything which we want to know further on this particular scheme. That's all from my side. Thank you.
Thank you so much for an excellent presentation. I hope you have given a lot of business ideas to the young minds today. If there is any question from the audience, please raise your hands. You can directly interact with our speaker.
contact info slide deck, what they want. There's something in chat box. But is it something for now? Yeah, I think so. Then I'm giving a contact which is 1089. So this is the call center number I have given, and my mail ID also I am putting there in chat box. So this you can keep all letter small or all capital. So you can do it.
So there is another question. Can an existing incubation center apply for this scheme?
Can
An existing
existing incubation center. This one thing I'll make it clear. This incubation, we call it incubation, but it is more a common production facility, number one. And if you are having an incubation center, which is more an accelerator or that kind of incubate, but if it is something like whereby you can have some product development facility and all that, then that existing can be upgraded. There is a limited support in terms of building, but on a special request, recommendation of SNA, some building support can also be granted, and budget which is maximum goes for it 2.75. There are division for production and machinery by and large, something more than 80%. Some testing equipment for production and quality part of it, and some building or renovation things. So it can be. Answer is yes.
Thank you, sir. Participants have raised their hands. I will unmute them. They can directly ask the questions to you.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Yeah, sir. Good afternoon, sir. I'm Saptashish Dev. I'm from research scholar from IIT Delhi. And thank you, sir. It was really very informative. So my question is like, sir, the actually for the research institute and for academic people, there is opportunity to submit a new proposal for any kind of, research purpose in DBT, DST, and ICR and all these organizations. So is this kind of similar facility available in this particular scheme also? Like suppose a research institute come up with a new processing technique or storage technique and they want to carry out the particular research. So will this scheme will help that particular student or?
Yes, because this scheme has now come up with the data that there has been a baseline survey, state level upgradation plans are coming up. So those issues which would be identified as researchable issues. So that's why I said that capacity building and research. So certainly that opportunity will emerge in next. I foresee that could be there in next 6 months, and there could be specific time bound and short kind of project which would be funded, and could be network and locally network or a regionally network kind of projects could be there.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
There is another question. Does this scheme support startup industries?
What is that startup?
Startup food processing industries.
What is there for the startup of the food processing industry? That's the question? Yes. Okay. So for the startup, I mentioned that if there is mainly that we want to, those who are in non-formalized kind of working they are doing. But yes, this gives an opportunity for the new enterprise also. But for that limitation is of ODOP. If there is an idea, there is a business proposal under ODOP, then those new entrants, those startups can seek grant support in it. The same 35% maximum to 10 lakh subsidy. And so means in a way that if the project cost is 35 lakh around, then you will be able to take the maximum benefit out of it, which is 10 lakh. If it goes beyond that, but the grant, which is a credit link grant, would not be more than 10 lakh. So that support is there for the startups also.
Thank you, sir. So thank you for one wonderful presentation. And if there is any other question from audience, you can raise your hands, or else we'll close this session. Yes,
I
sir,
hope
that is-
that because at first instance, I was thinking that people will say that why this is there when we are talking of high-end technologies, but really the country needs it, and we need to connect those high-end technologies, the smaller solutions, simpler solutions, and for our country's sake, for our people's sake. So that what kind of connect.
This is the most important topic, sir. Actually, a lot of people are interested, and there are a lot of questions coming up. And more kind, the people who are ready to start new industries are ready to develop their own product need much more information about these schemes. So it will be an eye-opening session for them.
Thank you.
So there is another participants. I will allow him to talk.
Hello.
Yes, please.
Yes,
introduce
Am I
yourself.
audible?
You're
Yes.
audible.
Yes, good evening, sir. I'm Charul. I'm working as assistant professor in the Albag Educational Institute. So my question is for incubation center, which you have discussed. So we are interested in like establishing the incubation center here. We have some production facility like baking and extrusion line we have, but complete line nahi hai, sir. So starting, I want
Charul,
to ask.
for you, for Uttar Pradesh in particular,
Yes, sir.
very typical thing is going on. Uttar Pradesh state nodal agencies, what they are doing, that they have a fruits and state horticulture department has every district some fruits and vegetable processing facility. Like it would be somewhere in Agra also. So I believe that Agra opportunity is not there because they are taking help only, or they are upgrading those facility only. So that's why, except Uttar Pradesh, I have not seen that, but rest of the states are relying for academic institution. So for you, it would be very limited.
Okay. And sir, any research collaboration we can
Yeah,
have?
research collaboration will certainly come. When we have to develop some content, some basic things, we relied only Agra. We reached to the institution which are in food around Agra. So we'll try to see that we can connect Dayalbagh also for that.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you for your patience. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mahipal?
So I can leave now.
Just a minute, sir. Just a minute, sir.
Okay.
Mahipal?
Hello.
Yeah, please close the session by thanking the speaker.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, sir, for informative lecture on PM formulation of micro food processing enterprises scheme. It was a very nice and informative presentation. Maybe some of the members are only heard about the schemes, but after your presentation, now we are more aware about the PMFME schemes now and how it is playing role in processing and value additions of perishable foods. Thank you so much for joining us, sir.
Thank you very much.
Tomorrow we have again very good lecture series on ozone processing, electromagnetic processing, and advance in drying technique. We will meet again at 10 a.m. So join before the time. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you. By this, we are closing this today's session. We'll meet by tomorrow morning around 9:30. Thank you so much. So regarding the timing and timing about the tomorrow's lecture, please stay in contact with us through Telegram app. Thank you.